Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Jesse.
Yo, Jesse.
Hello. Let's see if I can get. That's what I want to see. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing great.
Good. How are you?
Just peachy.
Excellent.
There we go. Jesse, can you hear me? It's Susan.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. How's the audio level? Because I'm on a headset.
It's way better than usual.
Good. Okay, yeah, I got the headset on purpose. The laptop just wouldn't work. Great. Thank you for the sound check.
Yeah. Okay. We have just a few minutes before 7, so feel free to this is what I want to do.
Hey, Jesse, got a question for you.
I will answer your question in uno momento. I'm trying to see how I can stop recording for a minute. Whatever, go ahead.
It looks like I am switching chapters. They developed a new chapter nearer to me, but I wanted to say thank you so much for everything I've learned from you. And would you mind if I continued until they get ours set up with the Southeast PA chapter?
Tell me who's talking. Is this Ed?
Erwin?
I think it's just called a seedling right now. So I'm not, I guess, Central Pennsylvania.
Who's talking? I'm sorry, I can't tell.
Oh, it's Rob Winslow.
Oh, hi, Rob. No,
Hi.
I did send you that email. I'm very excited, and I'll be announcing it later in the meeting that a new seedling chapter did open and is closer to you. But we would love to have you. Everybody's always welcome at our meetings, regardless of what chapter they're in. And I know the seedling is the title you get before you're actually chartered.
Okay.
So you're first starting up the chapter. That's what it's called. So it might be a while until they get kind of things rolling. So yeah, you're always welcome to join what we've got going on.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I think a few other people got moved out of our chapter also because of that, because we are growing in PA and it's really exciting. I'm trying to scroll down as people are coming in. Hi, Donna. I am so glad you could make it. My screen shows me like 3 people's faces at a time. So
I'm so excited. I can't believe every single other time I had a different meeting.
it's been crazy. I know we've been 14 months in.
Yes.
Right, guys. One more minute here and we will officially kick off this meeting. Okay. That is my. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our February meeting of our Southeastern PA chapter of Wild Ones. I am Jessie Schiffler. I'm the president of the chapter. In case you're new to the meetings, we kind of follow a timeline. We have some guest speakers coming up later and a great presentation, so stick around for that. But first, I wanted to announce we had an amazing growth spurt in the last month. We currently have 116 members. That's up 22 new members, and that's even taking into consideration that we had several people moved to other chapters that have sprung up. So we've had amazing growth. Lisa Olson from Wild Ones National gave a presentation on OSU, which is they did a webinar series called Tending Nature, and she mentioned our chapter and she featured the growth of wild ones
That's right.
in PA, so that was very exciting. And we actually had people become members directly from that presentation and list her as, influencing them to join wild ones. So that's very exciting. There are lots of ways that people are helping our chapter, but our main officers are Audrey is our vice president, and she takes care of all of our thoughts of the month and trees of the month, and has been working on getting us projects to help in the community. Susan is our secretary and webmaster, so she is the one that puts out our lovely newsletters and really helps us with our plant sales. We need you to be our treasurer. We've had a vacancy in our treasurer position, so we would love it if you can just keep track of a few numbers. We don't spend a ton of money. We will be having more money to spend with all of our new members and the things that we're doing. So if you can keep a checkbook, you can do this job. And it's not like a daily thing. Really, I think we made one purchase in the last month. So it's not a lot to keep track of. So if you have a few minutes a week or a month that you could spare to help our chapter keep our numbers in order, that would be great. Because if you don't do it, that means I have to do it, or one of the other officers have to do it, and we're already doing lots and lots. So if we want our chapter to be really strong, we need lots of people to help. Lindy is our membership chair. She's at work tonight, so she won't be on the meeting. And Marilyn gives us great advice on everything. So we really appreciate her input. If you ever miss a meeting, can check out all of our recorded meetings on our YouTube channel. I try and get them up there in the, a few days after the meeting. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but it's a great resource, especially because some of our speakers have so much content that it's great to be able to go back and look at things at your own speed. This is our website. All of our newsletters, our past highlights of meetings, different resources, they're all on there. Susan keeps making that better and better. So that's very exciting. If you have things that you would like to see on the website, resources or things that you think would be useful to people, reach out to Susan and see if we can get those things on there. I mentioned we've had so much new growth, and I really like to point out when new members join and where they're coming from, because that gives people the opportunity to see their members in their area or in the town over, and maybe you guys can join up and do open space projects together, or get together to tackle bigger spaces than just your property. So we've had a lot of growth over in Philly, and because of all of this new growth, there have even been some chapter seedlings that have sprung up. So some of our members, when they join, they like to share a little bit about what they're doing or why they feel passionate about native plants. And Marion has a blog that she does once a month about natives. She shares Doug Tallamy's information on Facebook. She's on Homegrown National Park, like many of us are. And if you aren't, look into that. She's talking to her neighbors, which we should all be doing, about getting native plants and planting them. And she started a biodiversity group in media. And I know Julia is in media, and there's at least, I think, one other person in media. So right there is the start of a great community group that can work on these wild ones things too. And the list just keeps going on. Barbara in Chester Springs is an avid convert since reading Doug Tallamy. I think he inspired all of us, and is sharing why native plants are so important. The two seedlings that have sprung up since last month, David up in the Northeast, those are the counties that he is covering. And if you have friends that you've talked to that just thought that our area was too far away for them to attend meetings or really have any impact, point them in the direction of these new seedlings. We have the majority of the state covered, which is very exciting. And they were telling me that North Central PA is the only area that doesn't technically have a seedling right now. But that area around State College is really well covered by the Native Plant Society of Pennsylvania. So I think the partnership between us all can really work. And Jane Alice in South Central, she just started the seedling less than a month ago. And she has this amazing property that she's working out of 32 acres, I think, that she's already converted to a lot of native plant communities. And we are actually going to be taking a tour there as a chapter that we'll talk about in a little while. Our thought of the month, Audrey, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I just want to check one thing, if you don't mind, the chat to make sure I'm not missing anything, or if maybe Audrey, you would, after you're done with the thought of the month and the tree of the month, if you would keep an eye on that chat and let me know.
Sure.
Thank you so much. So we are talking about live staking tonight, and I'm very excited, Audrey. You go ahead and I'm gonna mute because my dogs decided now to bark, and you go ahead.
Well, let's hope my dogs are quiet. I can't mute them. I want to thank Susan for giving me this idea for live staking for the thought of the month. Honestly, I've never done this before. I've heard of it, but it just sounded too intimidating. And then when I started to research this, I found that it's anything but. I mean, it just couldn't be more simple. So anyway, this information comes from Ryan Davis, who's the Pennsylvania Senior Forest Manager, Projects Manager with Forests for the Bay. And we're going to have a lot of links to other resources, but this is primarily the one that I used for this presentation. So these are his steps. First thing you want to do is make sure that you positively identify the plant that you want to take a cutting from. This is very important so that you avoid planting stakes of invasives. Sometimes they look very similar, and we just don't want to propagate any invasive species. The best time to cut stakes is when plants are dormant. In our area, this is around mid-February through March. And don't worry, you will not hurt the plant by taking a cutting. Plants are well adapted to disturbances like ice and windstorms, flooding, and animal browsing, and they have the ability to resprout from cuttings. The plant hormone auxin helps to grow new roots. Plants also contain lots of meristematic cells, which are plant stem cells. So you want to cut a section that's about as thick as your thumb. Very thin stakes have less capacity to grow into a new shrub. Use pruners to make an angled cut, which helps push the stake into the ground and serves as a visual to let you know which side is down. Stakes should be at least a foot tall and contain at least one node, which is the part of the plant stem where leaves or buds emerge, and you can see that in the graphic there. The more nodes your stake has, the better. Aim for 5 if you can, and you want to make your top cut flat or straight across with your pruners. It's best to plant your stakes right after cutting, but if you can't plant right away, the stakes will keep up to a few weeks if kept wet and cool in a bucket or jar of water, angled side down. For planting, all you need to do is push your live stakes into the ground so that at least 2/3 of the stake is under the soil. You can use something like a piece of rebar to make a pilot hole if you're struggling to get the stake in the ground. Be sure that whatever you are using to pre-drill has a smaller diameter than your stakes because you want your stakes to be snug in the ground. You can also use a rubber mallet to gently tap the stakes in, but be very careful not to crush or split the stakes. After planting, stakes need constant moisture until they develop their own root systems. Survival rates are best in wet areas, such as along a stream bank or in a bog. Some of the species that have the best survival rates from live staking include black willow and shrub willows, shrub dogwoods like gray, silky, and red osier, American sycamore, elderberry, ninebark, buttonbush, alder, and spicebush. So give this a try if you have a wet area on your property. It's easy, inexpensive, and provides quick erosion control. You can buy stakes if you don't already have plants to take cuttings from. I know one source is Ernst Seeds. There's no digging or backfilling, you just push the stakes into the ground. You should see good results in just one growing season. And I found, again, many informative articles with good graphics to help you learn more about live staking if you're interested. And Susan will provide links in our newsletter. Thank you, Susan. And just wanted to mention quickly that Susan and I were chatting about this today, and neither one of us have like a bog or a stream on our property, but we wanted to try this anyway. And, I was figuring, well, it's not expensive or time consuming, so let's just try it. We'll take a cutting, and as long as you keep them wet until the roots grow, you got a pretty good shot and not anything to lose. So or you could keep them in a bucket. And I was wondering, and again, I'm not super experienced, so you guys can maybe tell me if you've done this, but what about just putting them in the bucket of water and then letting them grow their roots in there and then plant them, and it's sort of like bare roots? Just an idea I had. Again, if you have any experience, please share. And Susan and I were also saying that we don't really have a lot that we maybe want to take cuttings from. So, maybe we could do, if people are interested, we could do a live stake swap where everybody takes, what they have from their own gardens, and then we get together and share. And that would keep costs down, make it interesting and fun. So back to you, Jessie. Or did you want to say anything else about that?
I want to say I love the idea of sharing stakes. The only experience I have with it is elderberry, and I didn't put them in the ground. I put them in pots thinking I would give them to friends. But besides that, same thing. I just locked it off and stuck it in a pot. And they were very successful with anybody who's not heard me talk before. I'm really bad about babying my plants. I don't baby them, I ignore them. So that's what I did with this. Like, locked it off, put it in a pot, and ignored these elderberries. And they've done great. So I have elderberry if anybody wants, like, very established. But they came from live stakes essentially. So I'd love the idea of doing a swap.
Okay, awesome. And I love the idea that you can be lazy and not do much.
Yeah, the plants will take care of themselves. You just have to give them the chance.
Awesome.
Okay, and did anybody want to share any experience about live stakes if they have any?
Hey, Jessie, it's Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, I just put it in the chat, but I tried this for the first time last year. And I only tried my common 9-bark Physocarpus.
Mhm.
And all the ones that I put in pots definitely budded. They were viable, but I had an extra one. I couldn't bear to throw it in the compost pile. So I stuck it right in the ground. I, trimmed at the buds again and had the right cut on it and used the rooting hormone. I stuck it right in the ground and it took off better. It was almost a full-size shrub by summer this year from
Wow.
last winter.
That is very exciting. So anybody, I have 9-bark also. Maybe I'll bring some of those too. That's cool.
Jesse, this is Sharon Richardson, and I just sent you a note in the chat room. I believe that I have a black willow, and I'm happy to share. It grows so fast, I can't keep it under control, but I'm not positive. How can I double check that I have in fact a black willow?
So that's a great question, because it would be very hard right now to identify it, since a lot of the identifying factors aren't there. I don't know specifically about black willow if the fuzzy buds that are probably there now are distinctly different from other willows. But my thought is, as long as you're confident it's a native willow, then...
Not confident. I don't know for sure.
Okay. So, because I was going to say there are several native willows. So as long as you're confident it's a native willow, I don't know that it necessarily matters that it's a black willow. However, if you're not confident, I would I would have to research it or look to see if the buds are distinctly different, that you can tell them apart by that. There are some plants that you can tell just by a bud what it is. I don't know if our native willows are that distinctly different in their buds that you'd be able to tell, but that would be my first thought. And then if you can, you know, tell for sure, then cut away. If you can't, maybe pay attention and identify it with, you know, the leaf structure and things like that later in the year, and think about taking cuttings next year from it.
Okay.
All right, guys. Audrey, are you ready to move forward with our tree of the month?
Yeah.
Awesome. We're going. There we go. Look at that.
That looks so pretty, Jessie. Nicely done. Okay, so as you can see, our tree of the month is river birch, Betula nigra. The river birch makes the list of top trees for wildlife, as seen on the National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife chart of Keystone native plants. According to this chart, 284 caterpillars use this tree as their host plant, including the Luna moth and the morning cloak butterfly. But I have seen up to 400 species of caterpillars reported on other websites. Many birds like pine siskins, finches, and chickadees enjoy
Oh,
eating.
Jesus God.
Can you guys just make sure that you're muted, please? Many birds like pine siskins, finches, and chickadees enjoy eating their seeds, and some birds make their nests in birches. Woodpeckers and nuthatches find insects hiding under the loose bark. Rivers are the easiest of birches to seed. I'm sorry, not the easiest, the earliest of birches to seed from June through early August. Besides birds, small mammals and hoofed browsers enjoy the seeds. Deer resistance is reportedly a major benefit, but we'll have to ask Susan if this is true, as everything she has seems to be chomped on by her deer. The beautiful creamy white, brown, salmon, and tan, and cinnamon-colored exfoliating bark of river birch stands out and provides landscape appeal even in the winter. The bark is more like blocky scales at the base. As the name implies, river birches love moist to wet soil or even standing water, and are often found near stream banks. But like most natives, they are adaptable and will grow in drier conditions too. In fact, I've seen them growing surrounded by asphalt in the middle of a car dealership parking lot in Reading. They will do well in clay and prefer acidic soil and even tolerate drought once established. River birches prefer full or part sun. They are one of the more heat-tolerant birches. Bedford area master gardeners suggest, however, that birches have some protection from the hot sun due to their shallow root systems. They suggest planting on the north or east side of a house or structure and keeping roots moist until established. River birches are fast growing and can reach heights of about 75 feet tall. However, they are relatively short-lived, rarely surviving 125 years. They can be grown as a single or multi-trunk tree. Their adult form is commonly globular. Leaves are described as diamond or wedge-shaped with a sharp point and doubly serrate. Leaves are bright yellow-green in spring and light green to yellow-green in summer. Autumn color is yellow. Like aspens and other birches, they make a beautiful soft fluttering sound when the wind blows through the leaves. Flowers form as catkins in late April through early May. I learned from the Natural Lands website that catkin is derived from the Old Dutch word for kitten because the flower clusters look similar to a kitten's tail. River birch trees can be seen growing with American sweet gum, black willow, eastern poplar, box elder, American plane tree, pin oak, swamp white oak, black ash, and silver maple. And Jessie, I am going to mute myself because the dogs are up, so they'll probably start barking here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a young river birch that I put in 2 years ago, and I thought that I would have to wait a while, like a few years, for the exfoliating bark, but it's already doing it, and it's very exciting. So very happy with that tree in my bioswale.
Jesse, can I add a comment about it?
Yeah.
So I had a river, before I knew anything at all about gardening, I wanted a landscaper to plant white birch in a particular place close to our home between the driveway and the house. And he informed me, and this is back in the 80s, I'm sorry, 90s. He informed me that white birch were diseased and I didn't want a white birch. What I wanted was a river birch. And he charged me $125 for a medium-sized river birch, and it was there. Well, the roots are so fast growing, it started to break up my driveway and go towards the foundation of the house. So as much as I love the tree, I just want to warn people, don't plant it too close to your house or to your driveway because the roots grow fast, the tree grows fast, and before you know it, you might have something bigger than you meant to have.
Always good to know the plants you're putting in, right? For sure. But
Yes.
so great on the landscaper for wanting you to get a disease-freer native tree. Not so great on not telling you that that wasn't the best location for it, huh?
Once it grew to full size, we had to pay $600 to have it removed.
That was an expensive tree, man.
You sure it was a river birch?
Or was he sure?
Yes. Yes, and it was beautiful, and it did have the exfoliating bark. It was a pretty tree. I have nothing against the tree, and I've planted it elsewhere on the property. I'm just saying not too close to a driveway or a house.
All right.
Yeah, that would make sense because I know, again, with the roots being shallow and fibrous, they're just going to keep going out and pull up the driveway. That's why I think it's oaks and hickories have the deep tap roots, so better for along a driveway or, obviously nothing, you don't want anything super close to your house, but yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. That's why experience always helps in these kind of things. Okay, our next business is our financials. We spent just a little bit of money this month to get prepared for a big tabling event that we have coming up, and we're working on a project. We'll talk more about those things later, but if you paid attention, I think it's less than $50 different from last month. So as you can see, we have money. We want to do projects. If you have projects you want us to consider, we want to do that. And we are hoping that Anne will commit to being our Community Projects Committee Chair. We're still in talks with her, but it's looking promising. So that will really help us get a handle on what projects we're doing, how the process needs to go, and get all of that coordinated. So that's exciting. We have information coordinators now. Rita and Chad helped gather all of the opportunities that will be at the end of the presentation. And as we discussed earlier, the treasurer position is open. So if you just don't hate numbers, I will take your help. Speaking of projects, we have this amazing project in Phoenixville that we're going to be helping with. We are currently designing a garden, two gardens actually, here at the Schuylkill Elementary courtyard as part of their student memorial. So it's exciting to be part of that project. And we have lots of members that are in the Phoenixville area, and several of them have voiced that they want to help with this project too. So that's another great reason to get connected with the people in your communities to have projects like this, and to learn about the opportunities that you can go and donate some of your time to making these projects happen. We have a members only wholesale pricing to North Creek order going in. You have until April 15th to email secretary.wildonescepa@gmail.com with the flats that you would like, whole flats only. Check out the North Creek website. We are placing the order as the emails come in to Susan to add flats to the order because they don't last long. If you're looking to do a project that you need a flat for, say it's something like a community open space project, and you know that you're not going to plant it until until May, don't wait until then to order your flats, or they may not be there. You don't need to include price information because that'll be calculated with each person's order. When you're looking at the inventory list, the inventory has to be available by April 25th. So pay attention. It's easy to read, but you just have to pay attention. And then checks will be made to Wild Ones at payment by check to Wild Ones due at pickup time. And if Chad is still on with me, I'm hoping he is. I am hoping that he can talk to us for a few minutes about the Pennsylvania Native Plant Society, which I mentioned earlier, having a pretty strong presence in the north and central part of the state. Chad, are you with me?
I am here, Jesse.
Perfect.
Hey, and did you have those slides I sent over to you? I know it's, oh, perfect. You're great. Look at that. I only gave her a few hours advance notice on them. So good job, Jesse.
No worries.
Hey, so I am a current board member of Pennsylvania Native Plant Society. Obviously, I'm a member of SEPA Wild Ones. I'm based out of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And you'll see at the end, I'm also a member of another group that I'll put a little plug in for too. Go ahead, Jesse. So Pennsylvania Native Plant Society is a like-minded organization started in the 80s. It was started by a group of Penn State folks. And so therefore, that's why its member base is concentrated around the center of the state. However, we are making attempts to pull them out, and just me being on the board extends their reach a little bit further than they've historically had. We do have two regional chapters, a Lehigh Valley and a Lancaster group. And the Lancaster group is doing a lot for behind the scenes lobbying and legislation and advocacy, which I'll mention a little bit more on that in a future slide. We have a very active Facebook group. Over 15,000 members the last time I looked there. We do have monthly board meetings where the chapter representatives come in and we discuss efforts that we're focusing on as an organization. And we do member events sporadically throughout the year. We do have two standing member events. We have our fall meeting, which this year we had Abra Lee and Ian Catan, formerly of with Larry Weiner. Now he runs a native plant nursery down in Virginia. And Abra Lee is she is doing a lot to research the lost history of our African-American gardeners and how they played into the history. So she has a new book coming out at some point this year. But they were great speakers. And then we do the annual Native Plant Festival, a big native plant sale, and that is in the State College area every year. This year it's on May 7th. We have a date for that. And then the membership dues are relatively inexpensive, $15 to join the group. Go ahead, Jesse, in the next slide, we'll talk about a few of the things that money goes toward. So some of our big initiatives that we're supporting, Keystone 10 Million Tree Projects, it's an effort. There are many groups contributing to this, but the goal is to plant 10 million trees across the state by the year 2025. There is a solar pollinator project in State College area where they've installed big solar fields, and they're working to establish native meadows around those because those are such difficult spaces to manage from a mowing landscaping standpoint. We have the native plant grants. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have this year we've partnered, we're in the process of partnering with Audubon Mid-Atlantic on their Birdie Dozen, which we are using as our recommended 12 plant lists for the Pennsylvania Native Plant Society. We also have published a Dirty Dozen list that we are advocating that nurseries in Pennsylvania stop carrying these 12, and we'll have a slide on that. We also are just rolling out our native plant nursery pledge. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we do a every other month e-newsletter and a hard copy snail mail newsletter twice a year. Just some of the benefits of your membership. Here's the Dirty Dozen and the Birdie Dozen, what they look like. We have these on our website. They're in our email blast as well. And we're proud to say, since we launched the Dirty Dozen, we've actually, Pennsylvania Plant Society cannot take sole ownership for Bradford pear and Japanese barberry being banned in Pennsylvania, but we did that Lancaster group that I was talking about, and as well as the PNPS board, we're contributing to the lobbying to get these two species removed. Are listed as invasive and noxious weeds for the state. So nurseries will be required to stop carrying those over the span of the next few years, which is great news. We have 10 more to go. And then many others we need to add to the list to replace the ones we're ticking off. Go ahead, Jesse. And then this is our native plant nursery pledge. And what we're asking nurseries to do is to stop carrying any of the plants on the Dirty Dozen list and to carry at least half of the plants that we have on the recommended Birdie Dozen list for that year. And then we'd have paraphernalia that they could post at their locations and send out indicating themselves as taking the pledge. Also want to mention the native plant grants. We have increased the dollar amount that we will be giving out this year. We have a deadline coming up just a few weeks. So March 1st is the deadline. And these grants are open to anyone, any member of the Pennsylvania Native Plant Society that can submit on behalf of a group. So a community effort or a group effort, which some of the things Jesse was just talking about absolutely would apply. You don't have to have any sort of government ID number or anything like that for the application. You just have to spell out what your group is. So a local church group or any other community-based group that you're a part of, or even just a group of neighbors who are getting together to address an ugly-looking median in the neighborhood. That would also be applicable. But deadlines are coming up. You got to be a member, and you can be awarded up to $500 this year for your efforts. And there's the link. You can also go to PA Native Plant Society and find it on our webpage there. Then the last thing, which is not a Pennsylvania Native Plant Society effort, but it is another passion of mine. So the Women's National Farm and Garden Association of Bucks County each year hosts a Design for Nature garden tour, which highlights, this year it's 5 gardens, we've done 6 in the past, but local gardens, privately owned, that are, the owners are in the, are making an effort to transition their landscapes to something more native, something more biodiverse, and we'll often look for people who are addressing watershed issues on their property as well. So we have the 5 gardens identified. We have the date locked down for Saturday, June 18th. It's always the Saturday of Father's Day weekend. We partnered with Bowman's Hill. They're a big sponsor of this. They actually give a plant grant of 100. They donate 100 plants to a homeowner who is a part of this tour each year that we select. Audubon, Mid-Atlantic, Birdtown, and Bucks County Master Gardeners are also volunteers. We would also be very happy if anyone is interested in volunteering as one of the garden assistants for the day. And what that would entail is you would be volunteering at one of the five homes to help guide people around the landscape. You don't have to be super knowledgeable about plants. What we do the weekend before, so June 11th, everyone gets a private tour of the five gardens that will be on the tour, and you'll find out which house you're assigned to, and you can talk to the owner there and learn more about the plants. But there are so many people. This last summer, we had over 400 people come through the tour, so it was had a really good turnout in the middle of a pandemic, and we're really pleased. So, and if you have interest here, I know there are a couple others. I'm scrolling through the names here that are a part of this group as well. who are here tonight, but feel free to reach out to me. My email was back on the introductory slide here, congopeppers@gmail.com. You can ping me or hit up Jessie, and she'll redirect your message back to me if you have any questions. Thank you very much, Jess.
Thank you so much, Chad. I want to volunteer, so I will be reaching out to you. However, I work the 11th, so I'm going to need to like Zoom around on the 18th to figure out what I'm doing. But I think I'll be there.
You'll be able to catch up.
Yay! But here is Chad's email on the screen, because we should all just get together and we can do the whole tour. Okay, so sorry guys, zooming through all that. Okay, next up we have our main presentation. I just wanted to preface it with, and it was already mentioned, but Pennsylvania banned 3 more invasives, Ravenna grass, glossy buckthorn, and common buckthorn. So those did not make it onto the Dirty Dozen, but they're dirty nonetheless, and now they are banned. I'm not stealing any thunder because Susan has worked really hard on a presentation. This is just for your visual. I am going to turn it over to Susan. If you are ready, I will stop sharing, Susan.
Yep, I'm here. I need to figure out how to share my screen. Just let me know when to hit the button.
I am done sharing. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see it. Mine's green, a green share screen button.
Right. Okay, did that work?
I'm seeing beautiful pictures.
Right, but I need to get to
terrible
the
plants.
I need to get to the where's this a slideshow that I need to get to that page. Okay, here we go. Welcome to our Wild Ones of Southeastern Pennsylvania presentation on identifying and managing invasive plants. This is a huge topic, as you can imagine. So we're going to look at the global issue just briefly, and then we'll get specific about identifying and managing some invasive plants that you're likely to encounter on your own properties. Full disclosure, I have no formal training in botany, ecology, landscaping, or any related field. I'm just a longtime dedicated gardener. I've been fighting some of these invasives for years, as you probably have too. As I've come to understand the critical importance of supporting native plants, I've focused on dealing with these invasives to improve the habitat in my own yard. So we timed this presentation to coincide with National Invasive Species Awareness Week. I didn't know there was one. It's at the end of this month and the beginning of March. That initiative deals with all invasive species, plants and animals, whereas we are concentrating here on invasive plants that we encounter on our own properties. The national initiative appears to focus on legislation and policies, which of course are important elements in controlling these invasives. So what makes a plant invasive? Let's start with a brief look at why plants are considered invasives. The Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources deals with certain aspects of invasives in the state. So if you take a look at their definition, it includes economic harm and harm to human health, as well as environmental damage that we're more familiar with. The photo is of Ailanthus, or tree of heaven, an aggressive spreader that has taken over a lot of edge habitat in certain parts of Pennsylvania, which is bad enough, but more recently it's been shown to be a host plant for the invasive spotted lanternfly, which is attacking food crops as well as this and other trees, including crops that are important to Pennsylvania's economy, like grapes and fruit trees. So how do plants become invasive? Plants that evolve in a certain area, if they're successful, have learned to compete with other plants for resources and to use other species, insects, birds, animals, to complete their life cycle, for example, for pollination or for seed dispersal. Invasives, on the other hand, are introduced species that don't fit in well. They take over resources or harm coexistent species, either en route to their survival or actually to survive. Gardeners, as lovers of all things plant, which we are, have been responsible for the introduction of some of these plants that have gone on to become invasive. Early botanists, of course, explorers and plant researchers have had a hand in this as well. That photograph is probably familiar to a lot of you. It's a view of Callery pear blooming along a Pennsylvania highway in the spring. We'll see it in another 2 months. This is when you can really see the extent of the Callery pear invasion, and it's a very sobering sight.
Susan, 1 second. There seems to be a little bit of feedback or static. Can you identify maybe where that's from?
I sure don't. I don't have any ambient noise. I'm on a
almost sounds like-
headset.
Oh, I wonder if it's your cord rustling. I bet that might be the only, it's probably the only thing it could be.
Okay, thanks. Let me tuck it somewhere else. Does that seem any better?
That's a lot
So
better.
far, so good, yeah.
Oh, okay. Gee, I'm so sorry, Jesse. Thanks
Yep.
for jumping in.
No problem, thanks.
Anything
Thanks,
else like that
Judy.
happens, let me know.
Okay,
Okay. Where am I? So what is being done about these invasives? The purpose of this presentation is not to catalog state legislation or to remove or control the plants, but I think knowing the statewide perspective gives us a sense of how widespread the problem can be and the important role each of us can play on our own properties. So DCNR lists over 100 invasive plants. However, this listing has no legal force. Ornamental plants on this list can continue to be grown and sold in the state. That yellow iris, yellow flag iris, is one example of an ornamental plant that has escaped yards and colonized waterways, crowding out natives and actually choking stream corridors as the soil builds up around the growing colony of roots. The information in blue on the slide indicates where yellow flag iris is banned from sale in our local area, contiguous states. So in Maryland, it's been banned since 2017. Delaware's ban begins in July of this year, and possibly Pennsylvania could consider a ban later in this year. Since 1862, Pennsylvania has regulated a few noxious weeds that affect agriculture. This is an important state industry, obviously, and that's where invasive plant regulation started in Pennsylvania. Some noxious weeds, like Canada thistle, have been regulated in Pennsylvania since the 19th century. In 2017, Pennsylvania passed the Controlled Plant and Noxious Weed Act, which prohibits the sale and propagation of plants listed as Class A and Class B invasives, which you saw on that earlier slide that Jesse shared. Until last year, Pennsylvania's list of noxious and controlled plants was limited to agricultural and aquatic weeds. Then in October, the Controlled Plant and Noxious Weed Committee added the first ornamental plant to the list, Japanese barberry, with a 2-year phase-in period. In November, Callery pear was added, as you saw on the earlier slide, and just last month, Ravenna grass, glossy buckthorn, and common buckthorn joined that list. So how did this happen? Getting that committee to start listing invasive ornamentals was an enormous achievement. It was spearheaded last year by just a few people who thought it was time to take action. Those few worked extremely hard to develop support from hundreds of other concerned residents, including members of this Wildlands chapter, along with many other conservation nonprofits and land conservancies, including the Pennsylvania Native Plant Society, as Chad was explaining. Together, the public pressure at these virtual committee meetings really made a difference. So what's happening with the surrounding states to Pennsylvania? Our neighbors have done a lot of different things. New York banned the sale and propagation of 68 invasives, many of which are ornamental, back in 2015. Maryland has banned 6 invasive plants. Ohio has a list of 38 that goes back to 2018. Delaware last year passed a comprehensive invasive plant ban. It takes effect this summer. It had a 2-year, either 1 or 2 year lag. West Virginia bans 1 plant, Multiflora rose. I could not find any legislation in New Jersey that banned invasive plants, but they just started a New Jersey native plant program to promote the sale of natives. So Pennsylvania is not doing that bad compared to some of our neighbors, especially since we have just started, the committee has just started addressing the ornamental plant issue. Before we talk about how to manage invasives, it's helpful to understand the conditions that have helped them succeed at the expense of some of our natives. Norway maple, brought to this country by an inquisitive and dedicated botanist whom many of us recognize, John Bartram. Some of the reasons for the tree's popularity are also the reasons it has outcompeted our native maples. It's usually the first maple to leaf out in the spring, one of the last to lose its leaves in the fall. This, plus its heavy canopy and quick growth rate, make it a sought-after shade tree, also allow it to outcompete native maples in the wild. Once Norway maple is established, its dense, shallow root system discourages other seedlings from growing under its canopy. If you have Norways on your property, you know that even its own seedlings decline to grow right under the mother tree. Instead, they sprout everywhere else in the woods and fields. These trees produce a lot of seeds with a high germination rate. Norway maple, along with Amur and Japanese maple, are included in the list of 25 invasive plants that may be considered by Pennsylvania's Controlled Plant and Noxious Weed Committee later this year for addition on that list. Here's another problem plant, Japanese barberry, which has escaped gardens and moved into Pennsylvania's forest edges. It chokes out native vegetation with those dense stands. This is an example of invasive that actually impacts human health. Research has indicated that stands of this plant provide favorable habitat for the black-legged tick, a Lyme disease vector. Pennsylvania finally banned the sale of Japanese barberry just last fall. There's a 2-year phase-in period. Delaware's ban of this plant takes effect this July. Anyone walking in the woods around here has probably seen Japanese honeysuckle climbing through shrubs and trees and covering them with the semi-evergreen foliage. You can see the scale of damage it can do, killing these trees slowly by preventing them from photosynthesizing and then girdling the trunks with its vines. This plant is also on the list of Pennsylvania's Controlled Plant and Noxious Weed Committee may consider at a future meeting. Delaware has already acted. The ban takes effect in July. This picture's a sobering sight. You might remember seeing orange daylily in roadside ditches before municipalities started to clean them up, the ditches, not the daylilies, by scouring them with their machinery multiple times a year. I've never seen daylilies take over to this extent, but if you've ever tried to eradicate them, you just dig them up and throw them behind the shed or in the compost pile. You know they're perfectly happy to take root there, and then you have more daylilies. So we know that invasive plants are problems. The question is, how do we deal with them on our own properties? There is a lot of information readily available about controlling invasives, mostly from state and county governments, universities, land conservancies, and other organizations that either own or manage large properties. The information they provide is mostly targeted to those larger properties, but most of us live on smaller properties, from town-sized lots to just a few acres. So this presentation aims to address this smaller slice of native plant gardening and offer ideas that are more tailored for our residential sized properties. So hand pulling and digging invasives are probably two of the most obvious methods of control. We see a weed, we're conditioned to want to pull it up. While hand digging and hand pulling will get rid of weeds you see, this strategy might be counterproductive in the long run, because one of the ways invasives compete is to produce a lot of seeds that remain viable in the soil for a relatively long time. So disturbing the soil by pulling or digging up one plant might expose a dozen or a million more seeds to the light, enabling those seeds to germinate. I have noticed this in my own woods when I'm dealing with garlic mustard. I can pull up a ton of plants, but it seems like the ground is covered with new seedlings the next time I go through the patch. So as satisfying as it is to pull out a weed and toss it in the bucket, it might be more successful in the long term to clip it with pruners below the plant's crown, which will minimize soil disturbance. And if the plant resprouts from the roots as bittersweet or euonymus, you'll need to circle back several times during the season to cut off the shoots, which will starve out the roots and ultimately cause the plant to die. Some additional methods, mowing or weed whacking, which is sometimes recommended for annuals like Japanese stiltgrass, and grazing is a great option if you have goats. Sometimes I do wish I had goats. Smothering can be effective if you're working in an area covered with invasives without any desirable plants, rather than with invasives that are growing in among your desirable plants. I have actually had good success smothering of cardboard topped with wood chips, even in larger areas. All you need is a lot of cardboard and preferably some help with the wheelbarrow hauling the wood chips. I've had very little weed intrusion using this method, and a bonus is that in a year or two, natives have started to seed in, which otherwise I think would be outcompeted by those more aggressive weeds. For example, I've got sedges, sensitive fern, and even some scarlet lobelia. You can also plant into the wood chips after just a few months because the moisture they capture makes it easier to dig through the cardboard, and the chips will break down to plantable soil themselves. I've also tried burning with a handheld torch. It is time consuming, but it's effective in small areas. However, you should be aware that some plants, some invasives have actually evolved to thrive on a regimen of burning. So research your plant before you get the torch out. Almost every guide to controlling invasives ends up talking about spraying. They all try to justify the decision to spray by talking about limited applications or using products that are rated for use in aquatic situations, as if anyone had consulted the organisms that live in the water, not to mention that you might be drinking that water down the line because water is interconnected. I have never heard a justification that convinced me that using systemic chemicals was worth the risk of harm to the environment or to living organisms. There are non-systemic products. They are less toxic simply because they don't get into the roots of the plant or the soil. They work on the foliage. They interrupt photosynthesis and starve the plant of nutrients. Repeated applications of a non-systemic can handle even perennial weeds if they're small, not once they're mature. Corn gluten, when it's applied at the right time of year, which is coming up, interrupts the germination process of certain weeds. Like the manual control method, persistence is required. Some non-systemic products are approved for use in organic certified operations. So if you are concerned about the impact of chemicals, this might be an option. However, this is just an evaluation of the impact of these products on food for human consumption, not their impact on organisms that are part of a healthy soil or on animals like caterpillars that might eat those leaves. So using chemicals is a very individual choice. I think there's another way to accomplish the goal, and that is part of what this presentation hopes to offer. So let us dive into the bad guys. We've talked about invasives in general. We're going to look at some of the specific bad actors that you're likely to encounter on your property. Garlic mustard is a really common intruder where soil has been disturbed, whether by you when you're planting your newly acquired natives, by animals that feed in our yards, or even by nature when a storm sweeps through. If you have garlic mustard, you'll see those rosettes of dark green leaves in the fall. You'll see them again this spring. They're looking a little bit ratty right now, but basically they overwinter just fine in our climate. By May, those rosettes will shoot up stalks 1 to 2 feet high. The leaves on the stalks are a little bit more arrow-shaped, as you can see on the right, but still with the sharply toothed edges. An identifying feature of garlic mustard is the distinctly purple stem at the crown of the rosette. You can see that on the left, and of course the strong smell of the leaves when they're crushed. Here is a native lookalike. Golden ragwort, Packera aurea, likes the same partly shaded medium to moist soil favored by garlic mustard. And like its foe, it has purple accents, but in different places. Where garlic mustard is purple at the crown, Packera leaves sometimes have purple on the undersides of the leaves. But the really distinguishing factor is those flower buds. They're purple. The first year I had it, I thought I had a different plant because I know Packera's flowers are orange, but the buds start out purple. Like garlic mustard, Packera reseeds freely and spreads easily to form carpets that are a beautiful sea of bright yellow in the spring. I'll take that Packera in the picture, and I'll take that lovely stone house too. The flowers are very different from garlic mustards, as you can see, but in the winter or the early spring, how do you tell the difference? Look at the Packera leaves in the upper right-hand corner. They're a little bit brighter green, a little bit less toothy, a little bit less heart-shaped than the leaves of garlic mustard. If you look at the lower left photo, carefully, you can tell which of those leaves are Packera and which ones are garlic mustard. You can just go right around the circle and say garlic mustard, garlic mustard, garlic mustard, Packera, Packera. Go back to the presentation, which will be posted on the website if you want to play that game, but you can tell the difference. The fact that they're growing next to each other, though, confirms that they like the same conditions, and hopefully Packera could be a solution to that garlic mustard. So what is the best way to control garlic mustard in your yard? You can pull or cut the immature plants. It's a great garden activity in late fall or early spring when we used to be doing garden cleanup, but now we're leaving our leaves. So we feel like we have to do something. You can also cut or mow the plants before they start to flower. Don't compost or let lie on the ground any plants with flowers, because seeds can apparently set even after the plant has been cut. And I'm not actually sure about composting garlic mustard because it's said to be an allelopathic plant, meaning one whose roots or leaves produce a substance that inhibits other plants from germinating. So if I do compost garlic mustard, I do it in a different place from the compost that I use in my vegetable and flower gardens. So you notice near the top of the slide, there's a sentence on the effectiveness of the controls that I'm describing. This is strictly the result of personal experience. It's just a guide for you as you decide how to approach each invasive challenge on your property. So we're going to dive into elementary plant ecology for a minute. Garlic mustard is a ruderal species. It's from the Latin word for rubble. These are plants that colonize disturbed areas. Their seedlings are quick to show up after any disturbance due to their heavy production of long-lived seeds. They're highly adapted to taking advantage of a temporary availability of resources, sun, water, and nutrients. Ruderal species typically dominate the disturbed area for a few years, gradually losing the competition to other, slower growing, more long-lived species. So can we use these aggressive native species to outcompete ruderal invasives? This is a relatively new line of thinking in the management of invasive species. I found an online source, The Humane Gardener. She calls it guerrilla gardening. She suggests adding natives to a patch of invasives to outcompete the invaders. Unlike cutting, pulling, and mowing, this method does very little to disturb the soil and encourage yet more invasives to grow. So Pachyra spreads easily in the right conditions: part shade, average to moist soil, the same conditions that the garlic mustard likes. She suggests that the takeover might take several years, but it seems worth trying. The other thing, if you try this, and I will this year, I would suggest that since the garlic mustard will still put up flower stalks, cut them off. Don't just walk away from the patch. Cut them off, prevent those seeds from forming, trash the garlic mustard somewhere, and hopefully the Pachyra will spread and we'll see how it does. The next plant enemy is lesser Salandin, Ficaria Verna. If you have it, you probably have a lot of it because it spreads rampantly with its underground tubers. As a double whammy, the leaves disappear by summer, leaving bare ground to be colonized by all manner of warm season weeds. It has a native look-alike. Like garlic mustard, Marsh Marigold is this native look-alike, Caltha palustris. Distinguishing them is a little bit tricky. Lesser Salandin forms a solid mat of leaves, whereas Marsh Marigold grows in distinct clumps. Marsh Marigold also generally flowers a few weeks later than Lesser Salandin, so if you're seeing these bright yellow flowers in early March, you're probably looking at Lesser Salandin. If you're not sure, get a good field guide or an online reference and figure out which one you have. Lucky you if you have Marsh Marigold. So how do we control it? Digging is not an option. Is not recommended because it's virtually impossible to get all of the roots and tubers, especially in the spring when the soil is soggy. Any tubers you leave behind will regrow. Smothering is an option, but use thick material and cover it well because this plant's roots are good at storing up energy underground, as they do all summer, and resprouting at the first opportunity. Can the roots be starved out by weed whacking the leaves to the ground several years in a row? If you try this, be aware that the plant also spreads via little bulbils at the base of the stems. You don't want to spread those around with a weed whacker or a mower. So what about using the same strategy as for garlic mustard? Lesser Salandin is another ruderal species. Is there a native that might suppress it? You'll see in the effectiveness box at the top that I have not had much luck with digging or smothering this plant because new plants just appear from the bulbils that are carried on stormwater. This is a tough one. If somebody has Marsh Marigold or maybe Pachyra would work, they also like moist soil. This would be a good place to try that. Bishop's weed, our next bad actor. I've actually met this guy in New York, not here in Pennsylvania, but I know plenty of people in our area that seem to be familiar with it too. The neighbors in New York think it's pretty. They let it grow all over their property, which it does with no encouragement at all. It has a very aggressive underground root system that is difficult to eradicate. Once again, there is a native look-alike and possibly a competitor, Golden Alexander, Zizia aptera. Zizia's flowers are yellow, whereas bishop weeds are white, but when the plant is not in bloom, the leaves are difficult to distinguish, as I learned when I was weeding the flower bed next to my neighbor's property and my hand hit something that didn't feel like bishop's weed. Zizia forms a distinct clump, whereas a mat of bishop weed is made up of individual plants with relatively thin stems. You really can feel the difference. If you dig it up, bishop's weed roots are bright white. Zizia roots don't dig up easily because they're a clump and they're brown. So you'll probably quickly realize your mistake, as I did, hopefully before you do too much damage to your Zizia. To control bishop weed, you can clip or weed whack the plant just after it's leafed out. Repeated weed whacking will starve the roots of nutrients. Follow up by covering the bare soil and replanting it with some aggressive natives that will outcompete those resprouts. However, when the bishop weed resprouts in the middle of other plantings, which it will certainly do, clip off the stems at the soil during the season and gradually they will become less pervasive. I don't recommend composting the roots of bishop weed unless you've let them dry out because they will resprout in the compost pile. Smothering can also work well. If you're redoing a whole area, replant the area to establish your natives and prevent the bishop weed from regaining a hold. I mentioned that the neighbor in New York was the source of the bishop weed invasion. Their flower bed is right on the other side of the fence that divides the properties. So what do you do about that? I actually dug a narrow trench at the base of the fence, several inches deep. I buried plastic edging strip right there. Metal edging strip would work as well. The top of the barrier is level with the ground. So with the mulch of leaves, it's virtually invisible. And that really did a lot to cut down on the reinvasion from a neighboring property. Yellow Archangel is deceptive because it starts out small, but I ignored it for a few years and suddenly I discovered that I had a thick patch of nothing but this plant. Like many invasives, it's highly adaptable. It's not picky about soil, moisture, or exposure. As a member of the mint family, it spreads vigorously by rooting at the stem nodes. It's easily recognized by its yellow hooded flowers and variegated leaves, and cultivars are sold that emphasize these features. Control I didn't think was too difficult. This is a shallow rooted plant, so you can dig it up, or to minimize soil disturbance, you can cut it at the soil level. Either way, it's going to resprout. Because it's a mint, that's what they do. Smothering would also be effective. Either of these techniques need to be followed up by repeated circuits through the planting, and of course replanting to eliminate bare ground and establish your natives. One note, weed whacking is not a good idea with this plant because every stem fragment can reroot. Along the same line, I don't suggest composting lamium until you've let it dry out thoroughly. Oriental Bittersweet is one of those plants that we used to appreciate for the showy berries before we realized it can also take over wooded edges and all this edge habitat. Like Japanese honeysuckle, it can gurgle saplings and break tree branches. It's a vigorous reseeder thanks to the birds that eat the berries, so you will always find sprouts if there are plants anywhere that your birds are foraging. It is classified as a noxious weed in Pennsylvania, and it soon will be in Delaware. There's a native lookalike, American Bittersweet. The distinctions are in the way the berries grow. They grow in the leaf axils all along the branches for Oriental Bittersweet. As you see at the top, they grow only at the ends of the branches for the native species. There's also a color difference. The capsules of the berries on the invasive are yellow. The capsules of the berries on our native on the lower picture are more orange. Oriental Bittersweet, sadly, is also not attractive to deer, whereas the native, at least at my house, has to be completely protected from deer until it grows above their reach. There is a different kind of native lookalike when you're patrolling for your Oriental Bittersweet seedlings. Take a look at the two photographs at the bottom of the slide. The one on the right is Oriental Bittersweet. The one on the left has very similar leaves. If it were growing in the ground and not in a pot, you might be tempted to pull it as bittersweet. However, if you have spice bush, Lindera benzoine, anywhere in the neighborhood, that seedling might be Lindera. So how do you tell the difference? Oriental Bittersweet leaves are a little bit rounder, slightly toothed, but the key is really the smell. If you're in doubt, pinch a little bit of that leaf and smell it. Lindera has a very distinct spicy smell that's absent, completely absent with Bittersweet. When you pull the Bittersweet seedling, if you do, you'll see the obvious orange root that confirms that you have pulled an invasive and not a native Lindera. Controlling Bittersweet is similar to dealing with Japanese honeysuckle. Clip and untwine any vines that strangle saplings, trees, or shrubs. Don't remove vines if they've grown into the bark of a tree, and don't pull vines out of the tree until they've been dead for at least a year, or you could risk damaging the tree branches. You can pull or dig seedlings, although this does disturb the soil. If you cut off seedlings or vines at the soil level, be aware that you'll need to come back several times during the season to deal with the resprouts. Nevertheless, I think that's dealable. Canada thistle. This is a tough one. The roots are extensive and deep. The plant seems to get stronger every year. This is another rootaryl plant, but since it's common in agricultural fields, which are subject to constant disturbance, it's been able to persist despite efforts to control it. Worse, if it's growing in an abandoned field, the owner often doesn't mow it before it flowers, meaning it will set seeds every year. It's listed as a noxious weed in Pennsylvania and in New York. So these photos show the mature leaf on the left, the young seedling in the center, which is your first sign of trouble, and then the flower stalks on the right, which can be anywhere between 2 and 5 feet tall. They appear in late summer. We have several native thistles that you don't want to mistake for weeds. They can be distinguished from Canada thistle by the shape of the flower and the leaves. I would consult an online guide to thistle identification if you think you have anything other than Canada thistle, because you don't want to pull a native, but you definitely want to tag Canada thistle. So controlling this one is a challenge. It could require some rethinking. Pulling and digging don't work well. The root system's too deep and too extensive. You'll never get it all. You can weed whack or mow the plants several times during the season to weaken the roots before the flower stalk forms. Above all, you want to prevent seed formation. Definitely don't mow or cut this plant once it starts to flower. Seed heads should be trashed and not composted. If you use smothering to suppress Canada thistle, follow up with natives that establish a quick ground cover because you will not have killed the thistle roots. And the best way to control resprouts is to create shady conditions that don't favor the sun-loving thistle. So listed here are a few examples of vigorous natives that might be used to outcompete the Canada thistle. Next up, Japanese honeysuckle. If you used to pick honeysuckle flowers and suck out the nectar when you were a kid, you might have been sad to realize what damage these plants can do. They are capable of strangling trees and smothering their canopies with dense leaves. It's difficult to imagine this vine being deliberately planted any longer, but it still can be sold as a landscape plant in Pennsylvania. Here are the photos that will help you identify it by the leaves and the berries. The vines are self-evident. The leaves are oppositely arranged. The oval leaves can develop small lobes as the vine matures and climbs into the trees, and there you can see the dark berries. If you're looking just at the leaves, there is a native lookalike that you won't want to remove by mistake. Although it grows as a shrub rather than a vine, the branches of coralberry, Symphoricarpus orbiculatus, look very similar because both have those opposite leaves all along the secondary branches. Honeysuckle leaves on the left are a little bit more elongated. Cannot tell you how many times I've started to pull a vine on the ground, like the one on the left, that I thought was honeysuckle and realized I was near one of my coralberry shrubs and about to yank up one of its branches. In the fall, the berries do make the two of these easy to tell apart. The plant's habitats are also quite different. Honeysuckle is obviously a vine, whereas the coralberry on the right forms a dense shrub that then sends out runners, you can see them on the ground, to form other colonies that provide food and shelter for birds. It's really a very nice shrub. So how do you tackle honeysuckle on your property? You can pull up seedlings and surface runners easily. The roots are not deep. You can also clip them at ground level. Winter is a great time to do this because those leaves are still green. If you go out in your woods and you look on the ground and you see green leaves that are not garlic mustard, it could well be honeysuckle. Let the vines dry out before composting so they don't resprout in your compost pile. If you have vines that are choking other plants, cut and unwrap them. Be careful not to damage the bark of the host plant. Cut the vine at the base of the plant and keep after it during the year, and you'll be able to control the resprouts. For vines you can't reach, and I have tons of those, cut them off as high as you can reach, and also, of course, at the base of the vine at the soil level. Wait at least a season to pull the vines out of the tree to minimize damages to the branches. It's amazing, but the windstorms will bring those vines down. I find them on the ground in my woods after a storm, and I realized that those are Japanese honeysuckle or bittersweet that I cut out 2 or 3 years ago, and they're finally down. Sweet autumn clematis is one of the few invasives in this presentation that I don't have experience with. So this information is not from personal experience, but it's from the internet. This ornamental plant is valued for its fragrant flowers in late summer, its fluffy seed heads later in the fall. It looks pretty, but it is a rampant grower up to 30 feet in a season and a very aggressive self-seeder. There's a native clematis that also has fragrant white flowers in late summer and silvery seed heads in the fall. Much more desirable to plant that one. The leaves of Clematis virginiana are toothed and arrow-shaped, as you can see on the right, rather than smooth and elongated. Species-specific control recommendations are to cut back sweet autumn clematis when it flowers, so you can recognize it, but before the silvery seed heads develop. The plant should be cut back to the root. It will resprout, go back and cut it back again. That will starve out the roots. Because it reseeds aggressively, any seedlings in the area will also need to be pulled or cut. Similar to honeysuckle, if the vines are climbing into trees, cut them off as high as you can reach and close to the ground. Remove any sprouts from the stumps during the year. Repeated cutbacks should get rid of it. This is one of those situations where conventional advice would include the recommendation to treat the stump with a systemic herbicide to kill the root. But why? Why reach for chemicals when it's just as easy to circle back during the season to the stump? You're always walking through your woods and your gardens, we all do. Just take your clippers and cut them back again. It'll be the same result either way. I've done this with Forsythia, Japanese honeysuckle, euonymus. It's worked well every time, gotten rid of the plants with no muss, no fuss, and no chemicals. Here's a bad one, English ivy. It's thought of as a ground cover, but it can also climb, and not just on old English houses. On the ground, it can form a dense mat that shades out native species. Once it goes arboreal, the leaf shape changes a little bit, as you can see in the bottom photograph. It flowers and produces seeds, which attract the birds, and then you have more ivy. As it grows up a tree, it has rootlets that attach to the bark. They don't dig into the bark, they don't feed, they're strictly for attachment. They hold the vine tightly as it climbs. As it overgrows lower branches of trees, those branches can die from being smothered, or they can break off in a storm literally from the weight of the ivy vine. Eventually, the tree can look like a mushroom cloud of ivy leaves clustered at the top, which is then prone to being blown over during a storm because it's top heavy. Here's English ivy covering the ground and smothering the trunks of several mature trees as it climbs right up into their branches. Ivy spreads on the ground in shady to part shade conditions, but once it goes arboreal, it thrives on sun as it starves out the leaves of its host trees. Ivy branches can also sprout from adventitious roots along the stem, so there's never just one vine. It branches in multiple directions, it keeps subdividing into new vines, and stems will root easily wherever they contact the soil. So ivy cuttings should not be composted unless they've been thoroughly dried out. Control is not necessarily difficult, but it's definitely work. When people ask whether I work out, I tell them I'm a gardener, and gardening is a contact sport. Removing ivy is definitely a workout. So you can pull the vines on the ground. It's a matter of lifting them and either uprooting them. They have relatively shallow roots, or you can clip the roots at the soil level. Vines on the ground can also be smothered, provided they're covered completely and the area is replanted to outcompete the eventual resprouts. Vines climbing up a tree are another matter. If they're young, clip them at the base of the tree and also several inches up. Pull out the vine section in between the two cuts so they don't grow back together. For more mature trees, you will need more serious cutting equipment. There are some great videos online that show people using chainsaws and even one with a battery-operated reciprocating saw to cut through the vines. You can see in the picture at the lower right that they've made two cuts through the vine. They've made sure to cut all the way through to the bark, and they have separated those two cuts so the vine will not grow back together. This needs to be done for every single vine that's growing up all the way around the tree. So the cuts are several inches apart. The person has pried out the ivy vine in between those two cuts, and that's going to cause the vine to die. The vines, however, should not be pulled out of the tree because they'll likely bring down branches if you can even pull them. A vine this thick is going to be attached quite securely to the bark of that host tree. It will probably take a couple years before it comes loose. Keep after those stumps because they will put out new sprouts. If you keep cutting them off, the vine will die, provided it's not also growing on the ground. So it is if you'll need to get rid of that as well. I have dealt successfully with ivy on the ground by pulling it up and replacing it with shade lovers such as whitewood aster, ostrich fern, and mayapple. I also have a lot of wood poppy that volunteers on its own in these woods. For arboreal ivy, I tackled some in January when we had that little warm spell. I found that even those thicker vines, and they're as thick as my arm, can be cut through with a bow saw, and the piece in the middle really did come out with the help of a little putty knife. And I will be circling back this spring to keep those resprouts at bay as I replant that area of the woods. Chinese silvergrass is an invasive I thought I didn't have until I saw it flowering on my driveway. The neighbor 3 houses down at the street has many huge clumps of it. So that's how far it traveled to get to my driveway. There are a couple of relative native lookalikes. If you compare the seed heads, you can see the difference. Chinese silvergrass on the left has fan-shaped branches with thin spikes that will get fluffier as the seeds mature. Indian grass in the middle has what I think is very different, thicker, softer looking, longer golden seed heads. Alderbrush grass on the right is a little bit tougher to tell from Chinese silvergrass. The flowers are not as concentrated at the ends of the stems, and they show a prominent opposite arrangement, as you can see in the blow up there. Chinese silvergrass also commonly has a thin silver stripe on the midrib of the leaves. If you're in any doubt about identification, check some online sources to make sure you know what you have before you go removing it. So isolated plants of Chinese silvergrass can be dug out, which is what I did. Mine was not well established. If you have a big clump, it's as big around as a dining room table. You will not dig it out with anything less than a backhoe. So the larger infestations can be controlled by repeated mowing or weed whacking, but there's a specific season to do it. During the growing season, before the plant flowers, is the recommendation. Once the plant has flowered, don't cut it back. This will just spread seed everywhere. Chinese silvergrass is also not a grass to be burned out. It's actually evolved to sprout quickly after soil disturbances like fire. So the last thing you want to do is burning it. It will just encourage it. Winged euonymus or burning bush, one of the most commonly recognized invasive ornamentals. That bright red fall foliage that made it a desirable landscape also makes it easy to pick out in the fall wherever it's invaded the woods and fields. It spreads by seed. It responds to being cut back by sending out more shoots. If you look at the photograph on the left, those corky wings on the branches, they really do feel and look like cork. They are a distinguishing feature for you. There are two native euonymus species that could be confused with winged euonymus. Strawberry bush has rigid square stems, but no corky wings. That's on the left. Eastern wahoo has purple flowers. That's in the middle, whereas winged euonymus has tiny green flowers. Then the winged euonymus on the right. If you're in doubt, look at the twigs of the shrub that you're trying to identify. Those corky wings, 4 of them in a 4-square orientation, are a distinguishing feature to tell you that you are looking at winged euonymus, the invasive plant. So, species-specific control. I actually found this one relatively easy to remove. The picture on the right shows the size of the shrub. It was probably 20 years old in the process of being taken out with a chainsaw. That worked fine. I couldn't get to the stump. It was too big for my chainsaw. So the stump in the middle photograph is what was left. So true to form, it promptly sent up lots of sprouts the following spring. I did that work in the fall. What I did was every time I walked by, I reached down, I knocked off the sprouts with my hand, or I clipped them with my pruners if I had pruners with me. That was 2 years ago. The stump has given up, but the root system is still sending out shoots 20 feet away from that stump. But they're easy to recognize by their corky green stems. They're equally easy to either pull out or cut just below the level of the soil. And this area has been heavily replanted with natives, so I don't expect to see a lot of resprouts going forward. I really think this was an effective way to control this plant, again, without treating the stump with a chemical herbicide. Oh, Japanese stiltgrass. The last one is the worst one. I have seen this referred to as one of the most damaging invasives in the country. What makes it worse than the plants we've been discussing this far? It combines a lot of the worst invasive traits into one plant. It is a ruderal annual. It appears quickly and aggressively after any soil disturbance, from simple weeding to major invasives eradication. If you have a road through the woods, it's going to appear on the side of the road. The seeds travel on car tires, boots, animal feet, in stormwater. If you don't have it now, as I didn't for the first couple of years on my property, you will. It grows in full to part sun. Only deep, deep shade seems to defeat it. It can grow through and over other plants. If the growth is thick, it will simply smother them. When it dies in the winter, as you can see from the middle photograph, it leaves a thick mat of vegetation that will prevent natives from sprouting through it the next year. The seeds, however, are right there and they're ready to go again. Scientists believe that this plant releases chemicals that alter soil chemistry and prevent other plants from germinating, allowing it to spread even more quickly. So in addition to everything else, it apparently has allelopathic characteristics. So once you've seen this growing, it's easy to recognize. It looks thin and even wispy when it's immature, as you can see on the left, but those stalks can grow 3 feet tall. They will send out horizontal stems. The stems will sprout more stalks and they will sprawl to cover everything. Traditional control methods include hand pulling before flowering begins, which is as early as July. I say good luck with that if you have stiltgrass on a property larger than 1/4 of an acre. There is just too much of it. Pulling or cutting to the ground in midsummer is also recommended before the seeds form. This supposedly allows a new crop of stiltgrass seeds to germinate, but not to mature and set seed. However, I've had no success with this method, and I think it's because in addition to the flowering, the seeds on the end of the stalk, which you can see in August, this plant apparently has covert seeds in the leaves that lay against the stalk, which mature earlier in the middle of the summer. So it's really a triple whammy plant. Weed whacking is recommended just before the seeds mature in August or early September. The plants must be cut to the ground because of these additional hidden seeds that set along the stalks. This obviously means that this stuff should not be composted. I think the residue needs to be raked off and burned or bagged. It's bad all the way around. Again, mowing and weed whacking aren't practical where stiltgrass grows in with other plantings. It grows right through my Carex meadow. It grows in the wood edges among the brush piles. You can't weed whack or mow there. This is really a tough one. Fortunately, this is the one for which I found the most alternate methods, at least being suggested. Cornell University Cooperative Extension is looking at smothering stiltgrass with cardboard or several inches of mulch. I would recommend both. And then reseeding the area promptly with annual rye as a first step, and then followed with replanting with natives. The recommendations for replanting include Virginia cutgrass and jewelweed, which I thought was really interesting. I have jewelweed. I'm going to try and establish it this year where I have the stiltgrass. I think one problem is jewelweed needs moist soil and part sun. I don't think it will flourish everywhere that stiltgrass does, but I'm still going to give it a try. Another alternate method was suggested by Adams Gardener, again, an online source. He has a blog that chronicles several seasons of experience with stiltgrass. He suggests several natives that might be able to outcompete and control it. So we're seeing golden ragwort again, which was recommended to control garlic mustard. We're seeing mayapple, rosy sedge, northern sea oats, Virginia wild rye, and bottlebush grass. So interestingly, I do have stiltgrass in my woods, but the one place I don't have it is where I have mayapple grown. So he may be onto something, and I find that very interesting. Another suggestion comes again online from the Humane Gardener. She suggests encouraging less well-known natives like Canada black snakeroot, enchanter's nightshade, and white avens to colonize and outcompete stiltgrass. I have started to notice white avens in partly sunny areas of my yard several years ago. I had to look it up in my Wildflower ID book, but you can see on the right over the winter, it forms that really pretty rosette of dark green leaves with white silver splashes. In the spring, the upper photograph shows that the flower stalk is a little bit lighter green in leaves. The flowers are tiny and white avens. It's a self-seeder. It adapts well to disturbed areas, and it forms a thick mat of near surface fibrous roots. This root system might be what enables it to outcompete the annual invasives like Japanese stiltgrass. The only control method I've had any success with is smothering. But when I did it, I didn't know to follow up with replanting natives. So the stiltgrass was back in 3 years. This year, I'm going to try smothering again. This time I'm going to be smarter and replant promptly with either annual rye or sun and shade tolerant natives, and we'll see how that works. So as you can probably tell from the recommendations, follow-up is critical. Whichever method you choose for the initial removal, follow up by keeping track of the area for resprouts and replant with natives that are adapted to the site and quick to colonize and outcompete those invasives. Once you've established a native planting, you can tweak it to include the plants that you want to see in that area, effectively mimicking nature by letting the slower to establish species succeed those quick growing natives that you used to colonize the site in the first place. So plant more natives. If you removed invasives that created canopy, such as climbing vines, trees, or even tall shrubs, plant native canopy trees and shrubs. Until they mature to create that canopy, fill in the lower layers with perennials and ground covers. If you removed invasives that shaded the ground, replant with layers of native forbs and shrubs that do the same thing. And if you removed invasives that covered the ground, including vines like ivy and honeysuckle, plant native ground covers in their place. Make sure to plant native ground covers under your other natives too, to fill every layer. Start with the more aggressive natives to mimic the quick comprehensive coverage of the invasives that you just removed. So what are some good natives for quick cover after invasive removal? Here are suggestions for ground covers, forbs, shrubs and understory trees, and canopy trees. You can find more suggestions online, and in other resources on native landscaping, but be sure to match your choices with your site conditions. Soil type, exposure, water, and surrounding plants really make a difference to what will succeed. So succession planning for gardens, I think, is similar to a business. Some will leave, some will move in when the key players change, but all of your plants are key players. Each one exists in a relationship with its neighbors. Removing one plant can mean more sun and nutrients for the neighbors, or the loss of a shade that the neighbor needed to survive. Some of the neighbors might not like the change and they'll die out. That's our goal in dealing with invasives. They'll leave more space for something else. So this photograph illustrates what I should have thought about ahead of time instead of playing catch up. In 2006, this area was flooded with afternoon sun. As you can see, the Rudbeckia just took over and seeded every available area. The crepe myrtle shows how much sun there was, since it's a sun lover. 15 years later, the cedar and the black cherries that are circled in red were less than 10 feet tall in 2006. They're now over 20 feet tall. They've created a lot of afternoon shade. All the Rudbeckias are gone. The crepe myrtle was replaced with a clethra, which is fine and half sun, and the area under the trees has become a dry woodland habitat. So this is a succession that you would want to create when you take out the invasives that you're dealing with, thinking about what's going to replace it next, and also how they'll succeed as those plants grow through their cycles. I thought it was pretty sobering to realize that humans have been the cause of the invasive plant problem that has impacted our native habitats so severely. I think we can also be the solution. Professor Doug Tallamy estimates that 86% of the land east of the Mississippi is in private ownership. That means that every one of us as private landowners has the opportunity to restore the balance of native plants on our property. The solution will happen 1 yard at a time.
Susan, you are crunchy again.
I'm sorry. Let me try and bury that cord. Okay, is that better?
I
Okay, I'll try.
Oh,
No, still?
I think it's good now. Yeah, it's super sensitive. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Oh, geez. And there's my phone, of course. Right. Okay, sorry about that. From the beginning, the idea of restoring habitat 1 yard at a time, Professor Tallamy developed the Homegrown National Park. This is a grassroots call to action to regenerate biodiversity and ecosystem function by planting native plants and creating new ecological networks. Our national parks, as amazing as they are too few and too separated from one another to preserve species to the levels needed. We need to restore and connect habitat where we live and work by removing invasives and planting native plants in our own backyards. The initial goal of this program is 20 million acres of native plantings in the United States, which represents about half of the lawns on privately owned properties. This is the largest cooperative conservation project ever attempted. You can learn more about this amazing challenge and add your property to the map. The link is right there, and it will be in the presentation on our website and in our newsletter. So there are lots of native alternatives to common invasive ornamentals. Our chapter newsletter features a different set of plant this, not that suggestions each month. In January, we featured shrubs. This month, we'll focus on trees, and we'll work our way right through climbers, ground covers, perennials, slope stabilizers, foundation plantings, plants in pots. We'll do it all. Dealing with invasives in our yard is more than just a necessary evil. It's part of our mission to restore our yards to their native habitat. Along the way, we learned some interesting things. Just 2 months ago, I was pulling up garlic mustard by the roots. Now I've learned that the best approach might be to plant some native competitors and let them do the work for me. How amazing is that? Here are some resources for fact sheets on invasives. Pennsylvania is one of just a few states that participate in the IMAP Invasives program, which allows anyone to report an invasive population that will assist scientists in mapping these invasives as a first step in developing effective control strategies. Thank you all for listening. And if there are questions or comments, Jesse, I don't know if we have time, but we could certainly open the floor for that.
We definitely have time, but Susan, let me tell you how amazing your presentation was. Thank you so much for doing all of that prep work, and just, it was beyond my wildest dreams. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was fun and interesting, and I learned things.
Yeah.
The goal of
So
all
did-
our work, right?
Yeah, so did we all. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? The only comment I had that I remember was about Marsh Marigold has 5 petals to its flower, and Lesser Salandin has more than that. So that's another distinguishing characteristic.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And Maya raised her hand. Is that to say that you are on the Homegrown National Park, or
No,
do
I
you
was
have a
gonna
question?
ask a question. I was going to ask a question.
Okay, great. Go for it.
So I know that these presentations are recorded, but is it possible to get the slides so that they could be printed?
They'll be on the website. Yes. It'll take a day or
Great.
two. It should be under resources. The whole presentation will be right there. Mhm.
Great, thanks so much.
You're welcome. So someone is asking how many properties are listed on Homegrown National Park. That'd be something that we could collect as information for the chapter. I know I've got my property on there, but I don't know how many others are.
Yeah, a lot of us did raise our hands or say yes that we were. So that would be a fun statistic to try and at least approximate. Keeping
It
up.
would, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
I think another thing that we talked about trying to keep tabs on more. And so everybody who's still on our meeting could maybe try and do this because we're going to start planting soon, which is very exciting. But if you can keep track of the quantity of native plants that you put in your property, other people's property, how many plants you add to the world, native plants in a year, and we can keep tallying that up and really demonstrate quantitatively how many plants, how much of a difference we're making as a chapter, that would be really exciting.
Jesse, I don't know if anybody can count that high, right?
maybe go by dozens, or I don't know, some kind of arithmetic that's simple.
Yeah, I think multiples,
But yeah.
because yeah, there's just million. I mean, I'm starting 50 species from seed, so I'm going to have thousands, and I'm sure everybody else is too. It's just so much fun.
It
I was
is.
gonna say, some of us are just starting, so we can keep track as we, buy things.
Smart. Yeah.
I used to
That'd be
keep a
good.
really nice garden notebook where I would say exactly where I planted exactly which plant. Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. So, Diane, you go ahead and you talk whenever you'd like.
Somebody did write this in, and that's a great question. Are there any special tips on getting rid of creeping Charlie?
Oh, we're talking about ground ivy.
Yeah, with the little purple flowers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I thought about putting that in the presentation because I have it. So it's very shallow rooted. So you can easily, as you're working anywhere, just pull, pull, pull. And as you've probably seen, you go back in 2 weeks and it's there again.
Yeah.
So the follow-up to pull, pull, pull is remulch, either with wood chips if you use that, ground, leaves if you use that, and replant, because I don't think it's a good competitor. It seems to come in between other plants. So if you can outcompete it with something else that spreads, like Ficaria, which also likes the same shady, moist conditions. Let's see, what sedum, Jesse, what's the sedum with the white flowers?
The T one, 10
Yes,
Taurus.
tornado.
Yeah,
Tornado.
there you go.
That's a good one. It's not quite as fast as Ficaria, but Columbine would probably outcompete it. Oh, a lot of sedges. Oh, sedges are wonderful plants.
And violets really do a good job at keeping it at bay too, I've found.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've had a funny experience with violets. The soil seems to lose mulch around the violet roots. They either pop up through the soil or they shed the mulch, or I don't know, but I don't like the exposed soil because, that of course attracts more invasives, but yet violets are beautiful. No question about that.
I'm trying to get my speaker notes to do what I want so that I can talk about the rest of these great opportunities coming up.
Oh, so Jesse, someone's asking if we can have Chad's slides in the newsletter. Are they in your presentation or?
They are. It was
Okay, great.
specifically the one about the birdie dozen and dirty dozen. So when I share the presentation, you'll be able to pull whatever you want to add to that.
I would love to have that in the newsletter. This is going to be an awesome newsletter. It's going to be packed with so much stuff. We'll just putting things in there.
I joked with Susan that our newsletter was going to be a book now because we just have so much great stuff to share. So
it will be a book, you're right, but a great one.
Okay, so upcoming events. At the end of each meeting, I like to give you guys all this great stuff that you can do until our next meeting or sometimes beyond. But now that I have Chad and Rita working on this too, it's super exciting. There's so much fun stuff that's happening. And pretty much every day from here until the end of the year, probably, you can do either online or in-person stuff. Some people are starting to open up in-person stuff. So if you missed this amazing series, there's 1 week left, Tending Nature through Ohio State University. 1 week left, but everything has been recorded. You can go to that website and listen to all of the lectures. They are amazing. They have an amazing page of resources and like recommended readings, maybe that the presenter mentioned. Just a phenomenal collection of resources there. Also at Mount Cuba Center, there's always great stuff to do there. It's a great place to visit if you've never been. We're hoping to do a group tour there at some point, but this is an upcoming event. And if you noticed, so the OSU thing is tomorrow. This is the next day. I'm talking, these things are coming up. PSU is doing some great things. Winter seed sowing is happening this Saturday. And that is in Chambersburg. So anybody who's out that way, and in fact, they may have just gone over to the Seedling for the South Central, but either way. And then Harrisburg native plants, how and why I got there. That's an interesting, I wish I was closer. I would like to go to that. Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, we're also working on a group tour there, but they have a winter lecture series happening. They have one coming up this Sunday, and then on the 20th, and then on the 27th. So each one is $15. Unless you're a member, it may be a touch cheaper, but check those out. The humane gardener, Heather Andrews, was a member of our chapter. I believe she went to South Central also, but she is doing a virtual program on the 13th also. So some of these you have like the whole day packed with great opportunities. Bowman's Hill is also doing their 22nd annual Land Ethics Symposium. So you have to sign up for that. It's $110 for the whole day. There's a whole list of lectures and things. So check that out. The Ecological Landscape Alliance is another similarly ecologically based program that you can get a lot of education through. If you're a member, a lot of their things are free. And if you're not a member, there's, smaller costs. But this one coming up on the 17th is a virtual class. Jenkins Arboretum is doing a free edible landscapes with native plants. That's also on the 17th. I think the 17th you could do something the whole day. There were like 3 things I just listed. Monarch Joint Venture is doing a tribal alliance for pollinators on the 22nd. And it is the only native-led organization dedicated to grassland restoration. So that's an interesting avenue that you can explore. They also have a whole Monarch Essentials course that you can sign up for, which is a separate event. The Lancaster Conservancy, for those who are in the Berks and Lancaster area, you might be closer to these things. They have a Nature Hour, Spring in Bloom, a guide tour to your native ephemerals. That's happening as a Zoom webinar on the 23rd. This one I'm really excited to attend. So you have to check out westpikeland.com. That is a township in Chester County, and they are having Mike McGrath give a presentation on the dirty little secret of lawn care. And I have some really strong thoughts about turfgrass lawn. So this orange box is from the flyer, and I can't wait to see this presentation to see if my mind is blown and there actually is a different way that I should be thinking about this, or if this is some crazy junk that's happening. So I hope that there's some discussion that's available afterwards. We'll see about that. This is very exciting for us. The Philly Home and Garden Show, we get this great opportunity to talk to lots of people about native plants when they might not know a single thing. So this is, when we're talking about reaching beyond the choir, this is the type of event that we do that at. People are going to be there looking for, you know, what's the latest thing that Comcast is coming out with and all sorts of things. There's a lot of home and garden related things. They need new siding for their house or whatever. And then they're going to walk by us and they're going to learn that they can grow butterflies and that native plants can help heal the world. And it's really exciting. And I really need help with people who are available to come and man the table, because these are the hours. It's all day Friday, all day Saturday, might as well call it all day Sunday. We have to have somebody at the table all those hours. And you don't have to know every native plant, because most of the people you're talking to don't know any. And they just need somebody who is passionate about this and who can point them in the right direction to meetings like we have, where they can learn a whole lot more. And sometimes it's just planting that initial seed. It's maybe the first time they've heard about it. They don't know Doug Tallamy the way we do. They haven't learned it yet. They haven't owned it yet, but we could be one of the first times that they hear it. And I heard very recently, you have to hear something 19 times before you will actually own it and take action on it. So maybe we'll meet some people that are on their 17th or 18th time and we're going to get them over the hurdle, or, you know, we could be the first or second time. So I can be there all day Friday. Saturday and Sunday I have to work and I can't change that. And I work all those hours. So I need some help. If you can email Seafood Wild Ones, let me know what hours you can work. I can give you a link for free tickets if you can man 4 hours of the booth. But if you are going just for a few hours because you can't dedicate any time to standing at the table, but you want to check out the show, this is a discount code that you can get half price, because the tickets are $11 at the door, $9 online, but with this code you get them for $5.50. So it is a fun show. I've gone there in the past before I was involved with Wild Ones, and they need us to be there to help people not buy the butterfly bush that, you know, somebody wants to push on them. So another exciting opportunity that we have, my dear friend in the Chester County Beekeepers Association said, hey, let's open up the traditional beekeeping conference that we hold every year and also make it a plant conference. He said, let's have a whole track. You get 5 speakers. And they are paying for the speakers. They are taking care of the registration. They have given Wild Ones members a discounted price on the conference, which is an all-day conference, access to 30 speakers. You'll pick which speaker you listen to live during the whole day. Like you pick a speaker in each slot, but then you'll get access for 2 weeks to go back and listen to all of the presentations at your leisure. And they've got some really great speakers. You go to chescobees.org to register. It's $30 for the whole day and access to the recordings. You can also get like a welcome pack, which has a t-shirt and stuff. I think they're $15 for a t-shirt, seed packets, and whatever giveaways that they're giving with that. But we have some really great speakers lined up to learn about not only services that they provide, but reasons how and why and what. So Heather Holm is going to be there, and I'm super excited. She's always a great speaker to listen to. Some things that are happening just a little bit later in the next month. Lancaster Conservancy is having an in-person meeting. There are some webinars by some really great speakers, Julie Lorimer and Benjamin Boat. I just listened to Benjamin Boat the other day, and his presentation is phenomenal. His new garden ethic book, if you haven't read it, do so. It's really great, and his presentation on it is really great. So 2 more slides, guys, and we're out of here, I think. Almost. The monthly meetings for the rest of the year, this is what they look like. We have everything nailed down except one meeting, our October meeting. We're still looking for a speaker or something to do. So note these down so that you can join us. Most of these will probably be by Zoom, but we are looking for places that will host us. The trouble then becomes who wants to drive for how long to get to a meeting, because we cover such a large area. So stay tuned for it, but lots of good stuff. And then beyond that, we have some in-person things that we're doing. In March, we were originally going to be doing a planting at Reeves Park in Phoenixville. That may be moved to April, or we may do the Reeves Park in March and do the school in April, or vice versa. We're still figuring out the details, and we'll get, once we know dates, we will definitely get them to you. But we are going to Jaja's place, definitely on Thursday, April 14th at 1:30. Email me that you want to come, and then I'll give you her email address. I mean, her actual physical address. If you don't RSVP and let me know you want to go, you won't know where you're going. So we don't want to just put her address out there to everybody, since anybody can look at these recordings. On April 18th, the online ordering for the Perfume and Watershed Conservancy sale starts, and then pickup happens Mother's Day weekend. And you have to pick your pickup time when you make your online order. The Berks County Conservation Celebration is happening in Reading on Saturday, April 23rd. I hope to get more information about that. I know one of our members is going to have a table there to give out information about wild ones, so that's very exciting. I believe that the Lancaster Wildflower Festival will happen on April 23rd, but that has not been released as a date yet, so I'm waiting for confirmation on that. Still in the talks of Hawk Mountain having their plant sale on May 14th. So anything with a question mark just isn't confirmed yet, but going off of last year's dates, that's about when they should be. We're trying to set up a guided tour at Bowman's Hill for Sunday, May 15th. Just not sure if they can accommodate us yet. We're definitely going to Stone Lee with Natural Lands on Thursday, May 19th at 6 o'clock for a presentation by Ethan Kaufman, Designing with Native Plants. So that will be a special treat. Can't wait for that. We are definitely going to the Bowers, which I talked about earlier with the new South Central location chapter starting up. So we are going to get a guided tour there on Saturday, June 4th. And in July, we are working on what date we are going to have a guided tour at Bondsville Mill Park. So lots of fun things coming up. And then later in the summer, we're going to Octoraro Farm for a tour too. Email me with anything that's definitely happening that you want to go to so I can get you on the roster and, you know, send out the emails that are pertinent to that. Then we have some members who are joining us from New Jersey because New Jersey doesn't have any Wild Ones chapters and we are the closest chapter to them. I had a really great conversation with a gentleman who has been a partner at large, but requested to be in our chapter now because he came across our information somehow, I'm not sure, but he shared with me a bunch of links for New Jersey based things that I just wanted to put up here for any of our New Jersey members in case they aren't aware of them. And these are good resources for everybody. They are just, they have a tinge of more Jersey focused things. jerseyyards.org. The Native Plant Society of New Jersey is very strong there, and they have an annual conference and apparently a plant sale. And then the greatswamp.org native plant sale. He wanted me to let people know who are in that area that is a thing. And then somebody had recommended that I should have a list of our nurseries that all the highlighted ones are all native nurseries, and the ones that aren't highlighted sell a lot of natives, but they also sell some non-natives too. So that you can, if this is your first meeting, this may be the first time you're seeing a list like this. It is also up on our website. And if you do extensive research, you can find all of these things, but this is a nice, concise way to see all of our nurseries. And then if you're joining us and you're not a member, because you don't have to be to join our meetings, think about becoming a member. When you become a member, some of your dues comes back to the chapter, and then we get to do more projects and put more plants in the ground, and we can heal the earth. So with that, I'm going to leave it on there. And if anybody has anything to say, please unmute yourself and go ahead and say it while I look at the chat stuff. Karen, yes, I would like to promote the Paw Paw Festival in York in September. I'm gonna just take a note of that so I can look it up.
It's
And I
not
will-
posted yet, but it's always in September, and National Paw Paw Day is the third Thursday in September.
Third Thursday.
But the Paw Paw Festival is always on a weekend at the Horn Farm in York, and I just looked it up because I would have put the date in, and it's not posted yet.
Okay. Not only will I, when we figure it out or get closer to it so we can promote it, I'll also make sure that our friends in the South Central are aware of it too. Okay, good, got that one. Okay. Zach, did you say you want to speak?
No, I was talking about that open spot in October. You guys got speakers every month.
I try, we try.
Sheesh.
We've been very fortunate to make some great connections. with
Yeah,
people.
yeah. It's incredible.
Do you want to speak? Do you have something you want to share with us?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Zach,
Yeah.
I'm booking you in October.
Okay, let's do it.
I love it. Okay, guys, so we are now February 10th, and we've got the whole year full of speakers. Done.
Zach, are you going to talk about Paw Paws?
Oh no, I'll probably mention it, but I made a website to find native plants. So we're gonna go live in 2 months. So I guess it will be an end of year reflection for more enhancements. Is my plan.
Awesome.
Mhm.
That'll be great. So what is the title? Working title of your presentation?
Oh, driving people to native nurseries,
Love it.
because that's the goal.
And that is perfect. I've got that. I see, Diane, thank you for pointing out that Geno's isn't on there. I know that Marilyn has used Geno's,
I
and
go there a lot.
I am sorry that it's not on the list. I will work on getting it added.
Okay, I sent you the website and all the information.
They're on the list on the website because they're one of my nurseries.
Okay, I didn't see it on the slide.
They might not be on the slide, but they're
Okay.
definitely on the website.
Because I've never been there, but I have to make it there.
Oh, it's a fun nursery.
You
It's
know what,
definitely
guys?
fun.
I wanted to tell you, I'm so excited. April 1st, Hungry Hook Farm is opening. That's their opening day. They're one of my favorite nurseries. I'm going there. If anybody else wants to meet me there on opening day, we can have a little celebration. But
I'm with you.
there is so nice. And she seed grows almost all of her stuff. She lists on her website if it's wild collected, where is collected from. Like, she's phenomenal. So I'm very excited to go there on opening day. And I already emailed her and told her to like expect my enthusiasm. So she
Good.
Where is it?
It is in Bainbridge, which is, I'm bad with a map, but I know it's in the Lancaster-ish area.
Will it be on the website?
The
opening day, yes. Yes, it will.
And it is, I can go back to that list. We don't need this page, do we? Let me see.
Geno's is closed from November 1st to April 1st. But they're available by appointment any other time, but their season starts April 1st when they're open regular hours.
Excellent. I'm looking, Cindy's saying, is it Twinning Valley Park in Willow Grove? Okay. What day is that, Cindy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
She cut out.
We lost
May-
you.
May 21st?
May 21st.
Yeah.
So can you email me that so that we can get that on our website as part of our
Yes,
things? That would be perfect.
definitely. And Collins Nursery is 100% native.
Oh, excellent. Well, let me make,
They're on our website too.
yeah, I don't have them highlighted though. And that was probably just my fault when I updated the slide.
Oh, okay.
Jesse, do we have Anna Falkoff speaking in August or July? Or not?
We do. She had agreed, she put it on her calendar, and then we just need to figure out the payment part, but I have her on Thursday, August 11th, if you want to
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
reach back out to her to confirm. But yeah, I think that's what we ended up with.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Zach, who has the best selection of what?
Oh, sorry, Geno's.
Oh,
It's it's kind of sort of north of Philly. And they had like 7 different pawpaws, 1 pure native and 6 cultivars.
wow.
And like if you get 3, it's kind of good to get different cultivars for some genetic reason. I don't know why, for fruiting.
Genetic diversity for sure. Yeah.
Then I went to the Pawpaws Festival, tried all of them, and I liked all of them. And some people like say the native one doesn't taste good and the native one tastes great. So I don't know why I fussed over the cultivar so much. But I
Not
did.
all pawpaws taste good.
Oh,
It's-
all right.
They're actually growing them like apples and they're grafting
Yeah.
them now so that you do have cultivars that taste good. It's like apples.
Yeah.
Apples were crap, you know?
Right, crab apples, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Zach, it's biased because they only let you taste the good tasting ones.
Right. Exactly. Good point.
Funny. Sharon, yes, we would love to. We have to figure out when we can do that, but send me an email and we will figure out how to get you on the schedule.
Okay.
Redbud address is out of date.
Hmm.
Is that the email address or?
Where does it say it is?
That's what I'm trying to see. Baltimore Avenue Media.
Sounds right.
That sounds right to me.
No, they moved to Providence Road.
Yeah, they're definitely on Providence Road. And Michael posted the corrected address in the chat.
Okay, I will.
They've been there for a few years now.
I've been there, but Google just takes me there. So that's
Yeah.
that's my problem. But I'll update the slide. Thank you. Redbud new address.
You're welcome.
Okay, if I can read any of this chicken scratch at the end of this, it'll be amazing. Thankfully, the text is saved in the when it gets downloaded. Okay, I don't think I've missed anything in the chat. Does anybody have anything else they're excited about or looking forward to, or projects that they want us to know about?
I'm looking forward to seeing what we planted last year start to, do something. Come on,
I've
spring.
just been accepted into the Watershed Stewardship Program, so I'm hoping to promote native plants in that.
That's awesome.
Yes, they do focus a lot on native plants, so that is really great. Yep, they are big into planting natives on buffer systems or buffer zones.
Riparian habitats, yeah.
Yep. But
I'd like
congratulations.
to.
Go ahead.
I'd like to point out my background here is our town library, where I'm on the Environmental Commission, and we got to use the display case for 2 months, and we have the whole thing featuring native plants, planting native. So if you look close, you can see we got the Ptolemy books and all that other stuff, and we actually have something from Jersey Friendly Yards. So we're trying to do more outreach this year.
Yeah, that's important. You got to get in line for that 1 to 19 times people hear stuff.
Yeah,
right?
so hopefully a few people, as they have to, it's in the township building. So whether they're going to the library or the township building or court, whatever, they're walking by it. So hopefully some people will see it and take note.
Yeah, I know when I'm going to court, I do think about native plants, so I can't be the only one.
Michael, where are you?
I am in Evesham, Burlington County, New Jersey.
Okay, thank you.
Everything's legal in New Jersey, so nobody's going to court. They're all going to the library.
Yeah.
That was a
So that-
reference to the musical Hamilton, guys, in case like nobody else is a dork like
Haven't
me.
seen it yet.
So that native plant sale that I told you about, we have a native plant demonstration garden that we've been working on for 2 years now. And this year, it is probably the first year that we really had a lot of the spring flowers. So that's why we're having the plant sale in front of the native plant demonstration garden. So it should be really fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great to show off all that hard work.
Yeah, we also are part of the Birdtown program. And the people in our township got hit by a tornado in September, and it wiped out a lot of their trees. And so we're giving away some free plants too to the people that got hit, because now their gardens are full sun instead of being in the shade.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's kind of fun. We get to meet new people and turn them on to natives.
Right.
And a lot of everybody's working towards that goal. Like they got a lot of free trees from the local nurseries, and somebody gave a lot of money to repopulating the area with native trees. So hopefully,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah.
We had thrown around the idea of doing an invasive swap Like as a chapter, we would invest in some shrubs or trees that we would turn over to people if they brought an invasive that they had ripped out to replace it with. And we thought that that would be a really great way to spend some of our money. We haven't decided on it yet, but I love it as an idea. And I think that at some point I'd like to see it happen. We just haven't figured out the logistics of it yet or implementation, but as an idea, I like it.
That is a neat idea.
It's funny that you say that because we just said the same thing. So it's great minds think alike.
Yep. You know, Judy, I was
Jesse.
thinking about all your little baby plants the other day. You are going to be so excited in another 2 months when they start peeking up.
We're excited now. We came home. It was I don't think it was before this previous meeting, but we pulled in the driveway and I'm like, there's a deer in the backyard. And the little bastard was, the cloven hoof spawn of Satan was actually in the fenced in garden. And we watched it and like right up over the fence. The fence is about 5 feet tall on the one side and not as tall towards the wood side, and just popped right back out of the wood side. Little bugger.
Jesse, I wanted to mention, I just put in the chat the website for the York Conservancy plant sale because they are dirt cheap. They're whips and they're dirt cheap. So you can get 5 pawpaws for $12 or 10 Norway spruce for $12. I don't think that that's a native, but I'm just looking at their prices. It's like 5 for $10 and 10 for $12. But the order has to be in by March and the pickup is in April, and all the information is at that website.
Okay, that sounds.
They're all whips and I've bought them, and you have to be patient, but they work.
Yeah. That's awesome. We will definitely get it in our newsletter, and hopefully some people can take advantage of that. I know we have, for a different organization that I help with, we have ordered saplings and bare roots, which are almost, they're almost the same thing.
Yeah, these are bare roots.
Within 3 years, they are just like, you would never know. You put it in as a stick in the ground.
Yep. That's what they were, and they were bare rooted.
Yeah, a Bradford pear bounty. Yes, Michael, I
Yeah, it's in South Carolina of all places.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. Tree exchange.
You know, that's interesting because I think South Carolina is where they were doing studies on whether Bradford pear should be banned because somebody was claiming that the rootstock was used to produce Asian pears. I don't know how the study turned out, but it seemed pretty. I think Clemson was involved in that.
Yeah, this is a Clemson initiative. Yeah.
Okay, well, good. So maybe they got their act together and figured out that there are other rootstocks available for Asian pears, and Bradford pear doesn't have to be one of them.
Yeah, this article is from February of last year, so it's pretty recent.
Okay, good for them. That's one reason Pennsylvania stalled on banning calorie pear for a month or two, is because somebody from the Landscaping Association brought up that calorie pear might be useful as a rootstock for fruiting pears. And I think that must have been dismissed because now it's on the list.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Marilyn, you're right. Bradford pear is calorie pear. They're
same thing.
one and the same. Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately here in Jersey, like nothing is banned. And bills have been introduced, but they keep dying in committee. You know, the landscaping industry is very powerful.
Yes, it is. I mean, we are having the same issue over here. We might have a controlled noxious weed plant committee, but it's all agricultural and aquatic weeds up until this past fall. And it really did take this whole Wild Ones chapter, Pennsylvania Native Plant Society, and some of our land conservancies just hung onto those Zoom calls and literally flooded the committee with public comments. All of our meetings have to be available to the public, and the committee members have to accept public comments. That's what did it over here. It was a concerted effort.
Yeah, we're trying to see what we can do. Somebody
Yeah.
mentioned they passed a bill in the lame duck session, this, like we have this Jersey Fresh,
Yep,
vegetable program.
Yep.
So now they passed this Jersey native thing, but it's nothing more than a marketing
it's a Band-Aid.
campaign.
Right.
And I believe even the bill that never went anywhere to regulate the invasive plants would be under the agriculture department, not the Department of Environmental Protection. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because Pennsylvania's is also under the Ag Department. I think Delaware's is, and New York is under their Department of Environmental Protection. So some states do it differently. But you might want to chat with Delaware because they got their standalone bill enacted just a couple of years ago, again, through the efforts of a senator and a representative who just really thought this was an important initiative.
Yeah, there's a group working on it. And, yeah.
It's a lot of work, I know.
I attended one of those committee meetings online for the noxious weed and invasive plants in Pennsylvania from Newtown, Bucks County. And they actually are allowing some of the nursery industry people to develop a sterile variety of the Japanese barberry. So, we'll have to, yeah, something we have to watch out for because, it's gonna be awful. Just to let you know.
That was a funny window because the Pennsylvania Landscape and Nursery Association really did lobby hard to keep Japanese barberry off the list. And when they realized they couldn't, I think they saw this, quote, sterile variety exception as their best fallback position. But when I read the addition, the Department of Agriculture has to decide. They're the ones who get to decide whether a variety is really, quote, sterile. So I think all we have to do is keep the pressure on because we've seen research out there that even the sterile varieties, when they crossbreed with each other, they can produce viable seed. So as long as that scientific evidence is still out there, I think we should be able to keep agriculture on the straight and narrow, but it'll take people paying attention. As you said, it's a never ending battle and you can't let up.
Yeah, wasn't the calorie pear supposed to be sterile?
Those barberry can revert back to, their original morphology. So that's a possibility as well.
Right. And as long as there's evidence out there, studies, that sort of thing that we can point to, I think there are enough people on the committee who are on the right side of things where they simply wouldn't allow the exception to take hold. In other words,
what also is interesting, Susan, is that they put it on the noxious weed list, but they did not recognize Japanese barberry as a health threat when actually, it harbors the black-legged ticks, which then get onto the deer. And then Pennsylvania is, I think, one of the leading states, if not number one, in people having Lyme disease.
Yes, we are. You're right.
So, that should be a consideration.
Well, it is in that's one of the criteria is harm to human health. The more evidence and research that comes out, the stronger case we will be able to make in front of this committee. I think one thing that's important is to watch the committee members. They do rotate on and off. If anybody has an opportunity through where you work or through someone else to get a forward-thinking member appointed to the committee, that's always going to help our cause.
Well, I just passed an ordinance in Newtown Township in Bucks relating to noxious weeds and invasives, and including, I was able to include one of them was the clary pear came first. I forget which one came first. Oh no, that was the Japanese barberry, and then the clary came in February. But also to be able to allow people not to have to cut down grass or weeds when it reaches 12 inches, because there's a lot of townships that say you can only let plants grow so high. It's 5 inches, 8 inches, 12 inches. So that's gone because, as you know, like Joe Pye weed and all these pollinator plants they can be 5 feet tall.
There's
So-
a Wild Ones National is actually working on that, and there's going to be a video presentation. I'm just waiting for confirmation to post the date. I think it's in late March, but we actually have an attorney from, I think she's in Ohio, who worked for several years on an ordinance like that, who's going to do a Wild Ones presentation on exactly that, on weed ordinances and how you can get around them and through them with your
Right.
native plantings. Very
Yeah,
timely.
And are you in Birdtown? Because
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, never mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the Pennsylvania Native Plant Society website, there's also some model ordinances, and maybe I should just send this to them because most townships, don't change their ordinances that quickly. It's like
It is
10
hard to get them changed. It absolutely is. Yep. This should be a good presentation. I'm looking forward to it.
And I would also recommend, if your townships have an EAC board, to get on there, volunteer, and you can help make changes a lot quicker from the inside than you can from the outside.
So true. Right.
We're
Susan,
working on that in our township.
What township are you in?
I'm in North Coventry, and my husband and I sit for the EAC, and we've gotten to make some great changes now. When new developments come in, they can only plant natives. They can't put in their calorie pair or their whatever else. So that's been a great change in the township.
That's great.
In Pennsylvania, do your environmental commissions have any powers? Because in New Jersey, we're strictly advisory. We can
We're
just.
advisory.
They're advisory.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
advisory.
But we have a supportive council, and yeah, we've been able to get a few things through, so.
Right. Yeah, I mean, squeaky wheels and all, but you gotta just stick with it, and
In a lot of cases, it's that the governing body just, is totally unaware of the issues. And you bring it to their attention, they're agreeable to pass certain things. They just wouldn't initiate it on their own, and I guess that's what you're there to, like, let them know about it.
And let them know how important it is and that you're not going
Yeah.
away, because they would
Yeah.
like for you to go away.
right. You just have to keep at it.
Yep. You're
Yep.
right, Jesse.
All right, guys, this has been a great fun. I wish we could get together and have conversations like this in person, but I mean, we would be driving lots and lots. That's why
We're too far.
I
Yeah.
struggle with it. I want to get together in person more often to have our meetings, but then I think it's so nice to sit here and, chat with everybody, because it's not like when you're watching a webinar, there is interaction. We can talk about what we're doing for real, and that's the fun part about this chapter. So
Well, and by
Yeah.
doing it digitally, nobody has to drive an hour when it's over. I don't think
Exactly.
we'd be able to
Right.
go this late. We wouldn't be
In
able
the
to go
dark.
this late. We wouldn't be able to have a full meeting.
Right.
And you can have a glass of wine.
Dang it, Michael, send that over.
At the library.
by the way,
maybe
I
not.
trip over my words. You probably think I've been drinking this whole meeting, but I have not.
But now, as soon as we're done. Good.
All right, guys, I'm gonna sign us off unless anybody has any last minute things they want to share.
No,
Great meeting, thanks.
Great meeting.
Great
you,
meeting.
Jesse.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks,
meeting.
guys.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Zach,
Bye.
I can, but I need to stop the recording.
Oh, yeah.
Good night, guys.